If you're a buyer in this market right now, your life probably sucks just a little bit. I got some tips for you. Let's talk about how to compete in these multiple offer scenarios. Hi, welcome back to another Coffee with Coleman. We love to discuss Washington, D.C., business, real estate, all that good stuff. My name is John Coleman. I'm a real estate agent here in Washington, D.C. with the Jason Mark Group. Quick favor, if you're a person that loves to win, then go ahead and hit that like button. It provides good karma and we could all use that right about now. If you really like winning and learning about the DC real estate market, then click the subscribe button so you'll be alerted when I release new videos. All right, so this market is shaping up to be another super competitive one for single family homes. And that's despite interest rates continuing to rise. If you have been through a multiple offer situation before, you know how nerve-wracking it can be. And while there is absolutely no secret sauce to winning every offer that you put out there, there are things that you can do to ensure that you have the best chance possible. Be sure to download the document linked below, which can serve as a checklist to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row for each offer you submit. I've also included a sample of a multiple offer checklist. Like, this is the list that an agent and a seller will be going through when they're looking at offers to compare them one another. I think as a purchaser, it's helpful for you to look at this and see what they're seeing. So checklist and competitive offer things, download them in the thing below. So first things first, if you don't have to compete, that's the best world. Now, it doesn't mean you don't need to make your offer amazing, because if you're giving a seller the opportunity and offer off market, they still want to be pampered. So if you're getting that opportunity, make sure you give them something very good and make sure that they're excited to have it. If you come in short, they're going to be incentivized to go to the market to see if they can do something better. Linked here and in the description is a video about how to find off-market opportunities. Check that out and see if there might be some things that you could do to find additional properties. So let's talk about what's on everyone's mind. Price. It matters. It's not everything, but it matters. I don't care if you're all cash. Cash is king? Not always. If someone is beating you handily in price and has some somewhat decent terms, they could still beat you. The difficult part in this market is figuring out what exactly to pay. The traditional way is to go ahead and pull some comparables. Look at the market data. Understand what houses are selling for in that neighborhood in the past 6 months and do a general comparison analysis where you talk about size, location, pros and cons of all the different pieces of the house to come up with what you consider to be fair. The thing is, in a seller's market, the idea of price is a lot more fluid because prices can get pretty crazy pretty quick. So recent data can be helpful, but it's not necessarily the benchmark that's going to be helpful, because right now things are aggressively going up in price. And if you want to figure out what's going, you have to understand what activity is happening on this property. When I say activity, I mean buyers. Like, what other people seem to be lining up to take this down? And this is where your agent's gonna come in. They have to be chatting with the listing agent and understanding how many showings they're having, how many people are doing what they call a pre-inspection, how many people have requested disclosures if they're not quite online yet. All of those things will make sense totally to your agent, even if it doesn't make sense to you, but it's the questions that need to be asked in order to understand how many people you're competing with. I don't care if the recent comp was the exact price and the exact house of this one. If you have 3 or 4 people asking for disclosures, 2 of them doing a pre-inspection, the price is gonna go up. So understanding that level of activity is gonna tell you how aggressive you might need to be. So again, I would highlight that you want to have an experienced agent, one that's been through these situations before, and help you read those tea leaves to put yourself in the best spot possible. Or frankly, save yourself the time if it looks like it's gonna get out of hand from where you're willing to go. The caveat here is your agent can't control crazy though. If someone wants to pay $500,000 over list and there's absolutely nothing around there to justify that number's gonna win. You can't play with stupid. If someone wants to get crazy, they're gonna get crazy. All right, so price, elephant in the room, out of the way. That's 1A. Yeah, 1A. There's a 1B. Price isn't everything. In fact, it's one thing to promise a lot of money, and it's another thing for the seller to actually get all of that money. And so the assurance that the seller is actually going to receive that money is something that we need to talk about next. And that's about playing with your contingencies. Because for you as the buyer, the contingencies are the protections in the contract. But protections means you, as a buyer, have a way to back out of the contract and leave the seller high and dry or needing to renegotiate the contract. For each of these contingencies, I've already actually drawn up videos. And I'm gonna link them below and in this video so you can have a quick cheat sheet to go over those to talk about them. I'll be quick here. If you want a deeper dive, I highly recommend just go ahead and check those out. So the way you as a buyer in these situations to be more competitive is looking to waive these contingencies. And this sounds a little irresponsible. And if you do it haphazardly, it kind of is. And for me as an agent helping people through this, it's a very delicate line. Because on one hand, I want you to get the property. Right there, I want you to have it. However, these are your protections, these contingencies. And we have to be on this very, very thin line of making sure that we can best protect you and get the house. And that is the delicate thing that we need to talk about together. And that's what those videos and what we're gonna talk about here.
So the first contingency is the inspection contingency. And I want to talk about this right now because I'm literally coming from something called a pre-inspection. The idea is you want to buy the house, you want to have less contingencies, and the seller wants you to have less contingencies. However, you don't want to just willy-nilly not have an inspection contingency or do an inspection. I think buying a house without an inspection would be kind of dumb. So what we did this morning is we went and we did the inspection for the offer that's due tomorrow. So now we have the knowledge, we have the data, we have the information that we need to make a sophisticated decision to go ahead and try to get this offer accepted. And we don't have to have that contingency in there. And what does that mean? Well, the seller knows that we're not going to try to negotiate repairs. They know that they're not going to ask for a credit to fix things. And most importantly, once we've locked in and we've signed that contract and they signed that contract, we're not backing out based on the inspection contingency. So they're going to feel a lot stronger about picking our offer over someone that has a contingency like it in it. Although it's not like we're going blind because we did all of our research today ahead of time and it costs us around $300.
The second contingency is a finance contingency. In a traditional contract, this contingency gives a lender a set number of days to officially approve you for the loan and say that you're good for financing. If for some reason the financing falls through, that would protect you and you'd be able to exit out of the contract. They'd give you a rejection letter and you'd be like, hey, by the way, I was rejected for the loan, not be able to buy this house. I gotta get out of here. Well, without the finance contingency, you wouldn't be able to back out of the contract if your financing fell through. This sounds scary because what happens if your financing does fall through? Well, this is where working with a really good lender is going to be helpful because you want them to have everything that they need for the file and they want to put you through underwriting and essentially have you fully approved before you put your offer in, which means the contingency starts to become a little bit more of a formality. It's not foolproof because like what happens if you lose your job 1 week before closing? Well, you're not protected then. So again, not foolproof, but it's one that's waived pretty often. So if you feel pretty comfortable that your lender has a good hold of your file and you're not going to lose your job or some financial thing's going to happen that's going to impact you significantly, then you can go ahead and do that. I've linked a full video below about how to pick the right lender, and this is really where that lies, is you want to have a very good thought partner that's a lender in order to make this happen.
Okay, so the third contingency is an appraisal contingency. And this really has one main purpose, which is the bank wants to ensure the property is worth the amount of money that you're paying for it. And why do they care? Well, you're putting 10% down. Guess who owns 90% of it? That's right, it's them. So their whole goal of the appraisal is to ensure that you're not way overpaying on a property, because if they were ever to have to take it back and sell it, they want to be able to recoup their costs. This one's a little bit more difficult to waive because there's a lot of things that are outside of our control. Like what happens if a person's having a really bad day and they go out there and do the appraisal and it comes in super low and it just doesn't match up with the numbers that we were looking at inspecting. So there's some things that we cannot necessarily decipher and control as we're going through it, but we could do pretty good job guessworking on some of the stuff. One surefire way is if you get an appraisal waiver. Sometimes some lenders, if you're putting 20% or more down and it's in a certain threshold, they'll put you through an automated underwriting and it'll actually tell you that you don't even need an appraisal to buy at that price. They feel like the value is just good enough, in which case appraisal doesn't matter anymore. You don't even need it. So huge advantage to somebody that's in a certain price point that's putting 20% down. And it's a conversation that you should have with your lender to see if it's a possibility. If you're not putting 20% down, then we got to start looking at the math. We have to start looking at what the comparables are and come up with what's the floor of what we're pretty comfortable that this thing will appraise for. And then we have to take the number that it could appraise for and then look at the delta between what you're actually paying for it and come up with what we could do in the event that the property doesn't actually appraise. It doesn't feel great for a person to tell you that you're paying a premium on a property, that it's above the other comps in the neighborhood. But the reality, in this market, it's happening more than we would like to admit. So even though it's that one person's opinion on that day that you're paying over it, well, you had a whole bunch of other people lined up that were willing to pay that too. So they're kind of dictating where the market is. And, you know, push come to shove, you get some knowledge knowing that once your property settles, you're actually the new comparable in the market. So if you can figure out a way to play with your funds or bring extra funds to the table to cover the gap between that appraised value and the contract value, then you might be able to waive that appraisal contingency and feel okay about it. But it is something that you should have an experienced lender, an experienced agent to walk through all the scenarios to ensure that you're not putting yourself in a drastically awful position. The other thing to consider is the appraisal can also get a little bit messed up based on condition. So it's something that you need to be looking for. And again, experience matters in these scenarios. Don't go just waiving this thing without having someone that knows what they're talking about.
So again, 1A, money, promising cash. 1B, contingencies, assuring them that the money that was promised actually ends up in their pocket. So then after those, you have all of these auxiliary things that you can play with in the contract. And this is where your agent's digging is going to come up for good information. So how fast does the seller want to close? Do they need a rent back of the home for a specific period of time after it actually closes? How large of an earnest money deposit should you be making to show that you're earnest about going forward with this thing? Knowing those marks in your market and knowing what you need to do in order to look competitive and stand out is going to help differentiate you from the other stack of offers that the seller is going to look at. Another thing I often get asked for, and I've changed my mind a little bit about these, and it's a lightning rod, is letters. Little love letters that you write to the seller. I used to say that they don't really matter and they don't work, and frankly, I think that they probably should be not allowed in general, but currently there's no rule against them. And so people will submit offers that have letters, and sometimes people will give those letters to the seller and sometimes they won't. I make a habit of not reading them. I don't want to look at them. I don't think that they should have an impact in it. But to say that I've never seen a letter make a difference in an offer situation, I would be lying. And I'm not here to lie to you. I'm here to tell you what I've seen and what happens. While I don't think it's a good practice, and I think it's something that should be probably taken out of the entire thing in general, if it works from time to time, then maybe it's something worth considering. Although I've also seen it go backwards too, where it actually didn't help them at all. They misread the situation and got it wrong. Don't want to spend your day breaking any fair housing laws. Am I right? I'm right. All right, so you're sleepy now, ready to fight. If you want to talk about some more tactics, go ahead and shoot me a note. Every situation's different, and how we need to get scrappy in the trenches to make you win the house is a case-by-case scenario, but these are some of the building blocks of how we're going to structure your offer to make you as successful as possible. All right, so your takeaways, make sure you download the information from below so you can have your checklist. Make sure that you look at your sheet that can compare offers. And then additionally, go ahead and reach out to me if you want to talk about tactics that make it work for you. If there's anything else, put in the comment section below. I love to answer questions. Sometimes those comments turn into videos. And I always like it when you stop by for another Coffee with Coleman. Peace.